The massive ship called GSS Concordia floated through space like a small metal city. Inside its metal walls, thousands of soldiers from different worlds lived and trained together. The ship was bigger than most Earth cities, with long corridors that seemed to go on forever, and rooms large enough to hold football stadiums. Staff Sergeant Marcus Chen walked down one of these corridors, carrying his gear bag over his shoulder. The Marine uniform he wore looked plain and simple compared to the colorful armor and clothing of the alien soldiers around him. He was average height for a human, about 6 feet tall, with dark hair and calm brown eyes. Nothing about him looked special or dangerous. As Chen walked, he passed groups of alien soldiers who stopped their conversations to stare at him. Some pointed and whispered to each other in languages he could not understand. Others just watched him with curious eyes, like they were looking at something strange in a zoo. The Krathari soldiers were the most impressive. They stood 7 feet tall, with thick gray skin that looked like natural armor. Their muscles bulged under their uniforms, and their hands ended in claws that could cut through metal. When they walked, the floor seemed to shake under their heavy feet. The Vexian scouts moved so fast that Chen sometimes could not see them clearly. They had long, thin bodies, and could run faster than any vehicle on Earth. Their eyes were huge and black, and they could see things in the dark that others could not. The Thuman shock troops wore armor so thick that they looked like walking tanks. Their bodies were naturally strong, and with their advanced armor, they could survive explosions that would kill most other beings. They spoke in deep, rumbling voices that sounded like thunder. Among all these powerful aliens, the small group of human soldiers looked weak and helpless. There were only 30 humans on the ship, chosen from different military branches from Earth. Besides Chen, there were Army Rangers, Navy SEALs, Air Force pilots, and soldiers from other countries. They all looked tiny compared to the aliens around them. Chen reached the main assembly hall, where hundreds of soldiers were gathering. The room was so large that it had its own weather system, with clouds forming near the high ceiling. Different species sat in groups, each keeping to their own kind. The humans sat together in a small section, looking lost in the sea of alien warriors. Admiral Zex Thor entered the hall through a side door. He was a Vorthak, a species known for their intelligence and leadership skills. His blue skin glowed slightly in the light, and his 4 arms moved gracefully as he walked. 2 smaller arms near his shoulders held data tablets, while his main arms gestured as he spoke. "Welcome, warriors of the galaxy." The Admiral's voice boomed through speakers that translated his words into dozens of languages. Today begins the greatest military exchange program in Federation history. Soldiers from 50 different worlds will learn from each other and grow stronger together. Chen listened to the speech, but he noticed how the Admiral's eyes seemed to skip over the human section. When Zexy Thor talked about learning from each other, his tone suggested that some would learn more than others. Each species brings unique gifts to this program, the Admiral continued. The Krathari bring their incredible strength and natural armor. The Vexians bring speed that breaks the sound barrier. The Thuman bring defensive capabilities that can withstand starship weapons. The Admiral paused and finally looked at the human section. And our newest members from Earth bring enthusiasm for learning. Quiet laughter rippled through the alien sections. Chen kept his face neutral, but he noticed how his fellow humans shifted uncomfortably in their seats. The message was clear. Humans were here to learn, not to teach. After the ceremony, Chen and the other humans were given a tour of the training facilities. The ship had areas designed for different types of combat training. There were rooms with adjustable gravity, chambers filled with different atmospheric gases, and arenas with obstacles that could reshape themselves during battle. Their guide was Lieutenant Korksal, a young Krathari officer who seemed friendly enough. He explained each training area with pride, showing off the advanced technology and impressive capabilities. This gravity chamber can simulate conditions from any known planet, Korksal explained, his translated voice carrying a hint of excitement. We can train in gravity 10 times stronger than your Earth, or practice combat in zero-gravity conditions. Chen nodded politely, but he was thinking about something else. He had spent 20 years in the Marines, fighting in conflicts across Earth. He had trained in jungles, deserts, mountains, and urban environments. He had learned to fight with advanced weapons and with nothing but his bare hands. As they toured the facilities, Chen noticed something interesting. All the training focused on strength, speed, and durability. The aliens seemed to believe that these were the most important qualities for a warrior. They had tests to measure how much weight someone could lift, how fast they could run, and how much damage they could take. But Chen had never won a fight because he was the strongest or fastest. In his experience, fights were won by the person who was willing to do whatever it took to survive. They were won by the person who could stay calm when everything went wrong, who could think clearly when others panicked, and who could make hard choices in split seconds. The tour ended at the mess hall, an enormous room where thousands of soldiers could eat at the same time. Different species sat at different tables, each eating food suited to their biology. The humans were given a table near the back, away from the more impressive alien warriors. As Chen ate his meal, he watched the interactions between different species. There was a clear hierarchy, with the strongest and most impressive species getting the most respect. The Krathari seemed to be at the top, followed by other powerful warrior species. The humans were clearly at the bottom of this hierarchy. Other soldiers looked at them with amusement or pity, like they were children playing at being soldiers. Some aliens even seemed annoyed that humans had been allowed into the program at all. Chen finished his meal and prepared to return to his quarters. Tomorrow, the real training would begin. He wondered what these powerful aliens would think when they discovered what humans were really capable of. In his experience, the most dangerous enemies were often the ones that nobody took seriously. The ship continued its journey through space, carrying its cargo of warriors toward whatever challenges lay ahead. But none of the aliens could imagine that the greatest challenge might come from the small, quiet humans sitting in the back of the mess hall. The next morning brought the first day of joint training exercises. Chen woke up early, as he had done every day for the past 20 years. While the other humans were still sleeping, he went through his morning routine of push-ups, sit-ups, and stretching. The ship's gym was empty at this hour, giving him space to think. When the training session began, Chen and the other humans quickly learned their place in the ship's social order. The aliens did not try to hide their opinions about human capabilities. During strength tests, the Krathari soldiers lifted weights that would crush a human instantly. They laughed when they saw how little the humans could manage. Vaktar, a Krathari warrior with scars covering his gray armor-like skin, seemed to find the humans particularly amusing. He was bigger than most of his species, standing almost 8 feet tall with arms as thick as tree trunks. His claws had been sharpened to deadly points, and old battle wounds marked his face and hands. "Look at these tiny creatures," Vaktar said to his fellow Krathari during a break in training. His voice was loud enough for everyone to hear, including the humans. How did such weak beings ever survive on their planet? There must be no real predators on Earth. The other Krathari laughed at this comment. They found it hard to believe that humans had ever faced any real danger on their home world. To them, humans looked like prey animals that had somehow developed intelligence and technology. During speed tests, the Vexian scouts moved so fast they looked like blurs. The humans could barely see them, let alone keep up with their movements. The Vexians seemed disappointed that the humans could not provide any challenge or competition. "Perhaps we should test them in the children's training programs," suggested Kiexara, a female Vexian with bright silver skin. They might be more suited to those exercises. The defensive tests were even more embarrassing for the humans. The Thuman soldiers stood perfectly still, while training weapons fired at them. Their armor and natural defenses could handle attacks that would destroy buildings. When the humans tried the same test, they had to use much weaker weapons and still needed protective gear. Chen watched all of this without saying much. He had been through military training with allies from other countries before. He knew that different forces had different strengths, but he also knew that raw physical power was not everything in combat. As the days passed, the subtle mockery grew worse. Aliens would, accidentally, bump into humans in the corridors, sending them stumbling while barely feeling the impact themselves. They would speak in their own languages around humans, clearly making jokes based on their laughter and gestures. The worst incidents happened during mealtimes. The aliens had natural advantages that made eating certain foods easy for them. Chthari could bite through materials that humans needed tools to cut. Vexians could eat incredibly hot foods that would burn human mouths. Thumon could digest things that would poison other species. Vaktar made it his personal mission to remind the humans of their weaknesses every day. He would sit near their table and make comments about how humans needed special food and gentle treatment. His fellow Chthari found this endlessly entertaining. "I heard that humans can be hurt by falling from just twice their own height," Vaktar announced one day during lunch. "On my world, children jump from heights 10 times greater just for fun." Chen continued eating his meal calmly. But inside he was taking note of every comment. He had learned long ago that the loudest and most boastful enemies were often the ones who had never faced real danger. The breaking point came during a tactical exercise in the 4th week. The aliens and humans were supposed to work together to solve a complex military problem. The scenario involved capturing a fortified position defended by automated weapons and energy barriers. The alien species immediately began planning based on their natural strengths. The Chthari would charge straight at the defenses, using their armor and strength to break through. The Vexians would move so fast that the automated weapons could not target them. The Thumon would simply walk through the defensive fire. When Chen suggested a different approach, one that used stealth and careful timing to avoid the defenses entirely, the aliens looked at him like he was speaking nonsense. "Why would warriors need to hide?" asked Korksal, the young Chthari officer who had given them the tour. "Honorable soldiers face their enemies directly." Chen tried to explain that avoiding unnecessary risks was smart tactics, not cowardice. But the aliens could not understand why anyone would choose a complex plan when simple strength could solve the problem. "Perhaps humans prefer hiding because they are too weak to fight properly," Vaktar suggested, his voice carrying clearly across the training room. "On my world, we have a saying: the prey runs, the predator attacks." The other aliens laughed at this comment. Even the instructors seemed amused by the idea that humans might have valuable tactical knowledge. Chen felt his jaw tighten, but he kept his expression calm. He had faced this kind of attitude before, from enemies who underestimated human soldiers. It never ended well for them. That evening, Chen sat with the other humans in their quarters. The constant mockery was starting to wear on some of them. A few suggested complaining to the human command, or asking to be transferred back to Earth. "They think we're some kind of joke," muttered Sergeant Williams, an Army Ranger from Texas. "Like we're pets they brought along for entertainment." "Let them think that," Chen replied quietly. "In my experience, enemies who underestimate you have already lost half the battle." But privately, Chen was growing tired of the daily humiliations. He had fought in real wars against real enemies. He had seen friends die and had taken lives to protect innocent people. Being treated like a child by beings who had never faced serious combat was wearing on his patience. The next day brought another tactical exercise, this one involving hand-to-hand combat training. The aliens were excited about this, since it would clearly demonstrate their physical superiority over the weak humans. Chen watched as Chthari soldiers sparred with each other, their claws carefully dulled to avoid serious injury. They moved with surprising speed for such large beings, and their strikes could dent metal training equipment. Vaktar dominated these exercises, easily defeating opponents from his own species. He seemed to grow more confident with each victory, and his comments about human weakness became louder and more insulting. "I wonder if humans even fight each other," Vaktar mused during a break. "Perhaps they are too fragile for real combat. Maybe they just surrender whenever there is conflict." Chen stood up from where he had been sitting and walked over to where Vaktar was holding court among a group of alien soldiers. The conversation stopped as the human approached. "Would you like to test that theory?" Chen asked quietly. The training room grew silent. Everyone turned to stare at the small human who had just challenged the most dangerous warrior on the ship. The silence in the training room stretched for long seconds. Hundreds of alien soldiers stared at the scene unfolding before them. The small human standing in front of the massive Chthari warrior looked like a child challenging a giant. Vaktar blinked his yellow eyes in surprise. In all his years as a warrior, no being had ever challenged him so directly. The idea that this tiny, weak creature would dare to suggest a fight was so unexpected that he almost could not process it. Then Vaktar began to laugh. It started as a low rumble in his chest and grew into a booming sound that echoed off the training room walls. Other Krathari joined in, and soon most of the alien soldiers were laughing at what seemed like an incredible joke. "You want to fight me?" Vaktar asked between laughs. "Little human. I could break you in half without even trying. This must be some kind of human humor that I do not understand." Chen stood calmly in front of the giant alien, his hands relaxed at his sides. His breathing was steady, and his expression was neutral. To most observers, he looked completely outmatched and probably terrified. "I am serious," Chen said simply. "You keep saying humans are weak and cowardly. Here is your chance to prove it." The laughter died down as the aliens realized the human was not joking. Whispers began to spread through the crowd in dozens of different languages. Some aliens seemed excited at the prospect of seeing their theories about human weakness confirmed. Others looked worried about the safety of the obviously suicidal human. Lieutenant Korksal stepped forward, his face showing concern. As the training officer, he was responsible for preventing serious injuries during exercises. "Staff Sergeant Chen," he said diplomatically, "perhaps we should consider a more suitable training partner for you. Vaktar is one of our most experienced warriors." "I understand that," Chen replied without taking his eyes off Vaktar. "But he seems very confident about human capabilities. I thought he might want to test his theories." Vaktar looked down at the human with a mixture of amusement and disbelief. The idea of fighting such a small, weak opponent was almost insulting. It would be like a lion fighting a rabbit. "Human," Vaktar said in a patronizing tone, "I do not wish to hurt you. My people are taught not to harm defenseless creatures unnecessarily." "Then maybe you should stop talking about things you do not understand," Chen replied quietly. The insult was delivered so calmly and politely that it took Vaktar a moment to realize what had happened. When he did, his amusement vanished instantly. His yellow eyes narrowed and his claws extended slightly. No one had ever spoken to him with such disrespect. The crowd of alien soldiers pressed closer, sensing that something significant was about to happen. Those near the front had a perfect view, while others climbed on equipment or floating platforms to see better. Admiral Zex Thor entered the training room at that moment, drawn by reports of unusual activity. He took one look at the scene and immediately understood what was happening. A human was challenging a Krathari warrior to single combat. It was either the bravest or most foolish thing he had ever witnessed. "Perhaps we should make this interesting," Admiral Zex Thor announced, his forearms gesturing for attention. "If the human can survive for more than 30 seconds, I will personally recommend him for advanced combat training. If he cannot, then perhaps we should reconsider the human presence in this program." The challenge was now official. There was no backing down for either participant. Vaktar could not refuse without looking weak in front of his peers. Chen had gotten what he wanted, a chance to show what humans were really capable of. The training area was quickly cleared to create a fighting space. Medical teams stood ready with equipment designed to handle injuries to different species. Most assumed they would be needed for the human. Vaktar removed his outer armor and weapons, leaving only his natural defenses. Even without equipment, he looked incredibly dangerous. His clawed hands could tear through metal, and his armored skin could stop most weapons. Chen removed his uniform jacket and boots, leaving him in just pants and a simple shirt. He looked even smaller without his gear. Like a normal person who had wandered into a room full of monsters, the two fighters faced each other in the center of the cleared space. The size difference was shocking. Vaktar stood 8 feet tall and weighed over 600 pounds. Chen was 6 feet tall and weighed less than 200 pounds. "Last chance to surrender, little human," Vaktar said loudly enough for everyone to hear. "I promise to make this quick and painless." Chen did not reply. Instead, he began to move slowly around the edge of the fighting circle, his eyes never leaving his opponent. His movements were fluid and controlled, like a dancer warming up before a performance. Vaktar watched this display with growing irritation. The human was wasting time with pointless movement when he should be accepting defeat gracefully. The Krathari warrior decided to end this embarrassing spectacle quickly. With a roar that shook the training room, Vaktar charged forward. His plan was simple: grab the human and squeeze until he surrendered. It would be over in seconds, and they could all get back to serious training. But as Vaktar reached for Chen, something unexpected happened. The human was not where he should have been. He had moved at the last second, stepping aside with precise timing that made the giant warrior stumble past him. The crowd gasped in surprise. None of them had expected the human to be fast enough to avoid Vaktar's attack. But everyone assumed it was just luck, and that the next attack would finish the fight. Vaktar spun around, angry at being made to look clumsy. This time he would not charge blindly. He approached more carefully, using his long arms to try to corner the human against the edge of the fighting area. Chen continued to move, always staying just out of reach. His movements looked effortless, but every step was calculated. He was studying his opponent, learning how Vaktar moved and where his weaknesses might be. The aliens watching began to grow restless. This was not the quick, decisive victory they had expected. The human was proving harder to catch than anticipated, though everyone knew it was just a matter of time. Vaktar's patience finally ran out completely. In front of hundreds of witnesses, this tiny human was making him look incompetent. It was time to stop playing games and end this humiliation. The Krathari warrior stepped forward and delivered a casual backhand slap, intended to knock the human down and end the fight. It was not meant to seriously injure Chen, just to demonstrate the vast difference in their strength. The slap connected with Chen's face and sent him stumbling backward. The force of it would have broken the bones of most species, but humans were tougher than they looked. Chen stayed on his feet, though blood began to flow from his nose and mouth. The crowd of aliens cheered and laughed, finally seeing the decisive moment they had been waiting for. The human had been put in his place, and normal order was restored. But something had changed in Chen's expression. The calm, neutral look was gone, replaced by something that made nearby aliens take an unconscious step backward. His eyes had become cold and focused, like a predator that had just identified its prey. For the first time in the fight, Chen smiled. It was not a pleasant expression. The smile on Chen's face made Vaktar hesitate for the first time in the fight. There was something wrong with that expression. Something that did not match what the Krathari understood about human behavior. Prey animals did not smile when they were hurt and cornered. Chen wiped the blood from his mouth with the back of his hand, never taking his eyes off Vaktar. The pain from the slap seemed to have awakened something in him, something that had been sleeping during the weeks of mockery and humiliation. "Thank you," Chen said quietly. His voice carried clearly in the silent training room. "I was wondering when you would stop playing around." The aliens in the crowd shifted uncomfortably. The human's tone had changed completely. Before, he had sounded calm and polite. Now there was something dangerous in his voice, something that made instinctive alarm bells ring in the minds of creatures who had evolved as prey animals. Vaktar shook off his moment of uncertainty. He was a Krathari warrior, feared throughout the galaxy for his strength and combat skills. One small human with a bloody nose could not possibly threaten him, no matter how strangely he was acting. "I grow tired of this game," Vaktar declared. "Time to end your foolishness." The Krathari warrior moved forward again, this time more carefully. He kept his guard up and approached step by step, ready to grab the human as soon as he came within reach. Chen began to move again, but his movements had changed. Before, he had been defensive, staying out of range and avoiding contact. Now he moved like he was hunting something, each step precise and purposeful. The two fighters circled each other for several seconds. The crowd watched in fascination, many of them recording the event to share with friends later. They expected to see the human finally overwhelmed and defeated. Then Chen stopped moving backward and took a step forward. Vaktar was surprised by this change in tactics, but he reacted quickly. He reached out with both massive arms to grab the human, confident that his superior size and strength would end the fight instantly. What happened next took exactly 3 seconds, though it seemed much longer to everyone watching. Chen moved like he had been struck by lightning. His body flowed around Vaktar's reaching arms with impossible speed and precision. Instead of trying to match the alien's strength, he used the Krathari's own momentum against him. As Vaktar committed to his grabbing attack, Chen stepped to the side and grabbed the warrior's extended arm. Using leverage and technique that the aliens had never seen before, the human twisted and pulled in a way that sent the 8-foot giant stumbling forward off balance. But Chen was not finished. As Vaktar tried to recover, the human moved to his opponent's back with fluid grace. The aliens watching could barely follow the movement. One moment Chen was in front of the Krathari. The next, he was behind him. Chen's hands moved with surgical precision. He struck specific points on Vaktar's neck and spine, targeting nerve clusters and pressure points that existed in most humanoid species. The Krathari's natural armor was useless against attacks that bypassed it entirely. Vaktar felt his legs go numb and realized with shock that he could not move properly. The human had done something to his nervous system, something that should have been impossible for such a small creature. Chen completed his attack with a final movement that was almost too fast to see. He grabbed Vaktar's massive head in his hands and twisted with explosive force, using leverage and anatomy knowledge that turned the human body into a precision weapon. The sound that followed made several aliens in the crowd step backward in horror. It was the unmistakable crack of breaking bone, amplified by the perfect acoustics of the training room. Vaktar, the mighty Krathari warrior who had never lost a fight, collapsed to the deck like a falling tree. His body hit the metal floor with a crash that seemed to echo forever in the suddenly silent room. Chen stood over the fallen alien, breathing normally, without a scratch on him except for the blood from the earlier slap. He looked down at Vaktar with the same calm expression he had worn throughout their weeks of training together. The training room was completely quiet. Hundreds of alien soldiers stared in shock at the scene before them. The giant Krathari warrior lay motionless, his head twisted at an angle that made it clear his skull had been crushed despite its legendary thickness. Admiral Zex Thor was the first to break the silence. His 4 arms moved frantically as he checked his instruments and called for medical teams, though everyone in the room knew it was too late. "Impossible," whispered Lieutenant Korksal, his voice barely audible. "Krathari skulls are 3 times thicker than human bone. They can withstand direct weapon fire." Chen looked around at the crowd of stunned aliens. His expression was still calm and polite, as if nothing unusual had happened. "You were right about one thing," Chen said to the silent crowd. "Humans are different from other species. We did not evolve to be the strongest or the fastest. We evolved to be the most dangerous." Some of the aliens began to back away from the human, finally understanding that they had been completely wrong about Earth's inhabitants. This small, quiet creature had just killed one of the galaxy's most feared warriors in seconds, using nothing but knowledge and technique. Chen walked over to where his jacket lay on the floor and put it back on, still moving with the same casual confidence he had shown before the fight. He straightened his collar and smoothed down his hair, looking like a businessman getting ready for a meeting. "The human martial arts that I used are over 2,000 years old," Chen explained to the silent crowd. "They were developed by my ancestors to kill enemy soldiers quickly and quietly. Every human soldier learns them as part of basic training." Admiral Zex Thor stared at Chen with new understanding. The Federation had studied human technology and human culture, but they had not studied human warfare. They had assumed that physical capabilities were the most important factor in combat effectiveness. "How?" Admiral Zex Thor asked, his voice shaking slightly. "How did your species develop such techniques?" Chen looked at the Admiral with eyes that seemed much older than his appearance suggested. "We had to," Chen said simply. "On Earth, humans were not the biggest or strongest predators, but we were the smartest. We learned that the best way to kill something bigger and stronger than you is to know exactly how to break it." The medical teams arrived and confirmed what everyone already knew. Vaktar was dead, killed by precise application of force to weak points in his anatomy that should have been protected by his natural armor. Chen walked toward the exit of the training room, moving through a crowd that parted before him like he was carrying a dangerous weapon. None of the alien soldiers wanted to get too close to the quiet human who had just demonstrated capabilities they had never imagined. As Chen reached the door, he turned back to address the crowd one final time. "Your species evolved as prey animals," he said calmly. "Ours evolved as hunters. That is why we think differently about combat. We do not fight to prove how strong we are. We fight to make sure our enemies never fight again." The door closed behind Chen, leaving hundreds of alien soldiers to stare at the place where their understanding of the universe had just been shattered forever. News of the incident spread through the ship faster than Admiral Zexthor could control it. Within hours, every alien soldier on the GSS Concordia had seen recordings of the fight. Within days, the footage had reached every world in the Galactic Federation. The reaction was unlike anything in Federation history. Species that had never agreed on anything suddenly found themselves united by a common feeling: fear of humanity. Admiral Zexthor sat in his private office, surrounded by reports and data files that painted a terrifying new picture of Earth's inhabitants. For the past 3 days, Federation scientists had been frantically reviewing everything they knew about human evolution and history. The results were disturbing. "Sir," said his aide, a nervous Vexian named Kiexara, "the biology department has completed their analysis of human development. You need to see this immediately." Zexthor took the data tablet with 2 of his 4 hands, while the others continued sorting through other reports. As he read, his blue skin grew noticeably paler. According to the scientists, humans were unique among all known species in the galaxy. Every other intelligent race had evolved from herbivores or omnivores that had been prey animals for millions of years. Their instincts were to run, hide, or defend themselves when threatened. Humans had evolved from persistence hunters, predators that killed their prey through exhaustion and intelligence rather than raw strength. Even after developing advanced brains and technology, they had continued to refine their killing techniques for thousands of years. "They call it martial arts," Kixara explained, her voice trembling slightly. "According to our research, every human culture has developed multiple ways to kill other beings with their bare hands. They study these methods for recreation." Zexthor set down the tablet and activated his communication system. Within minutes, he was connected to the Federation High Council on the capital world of Centauri Prime. The council chamber appeared on his screen, showing representatives from dozens of species all talking at once. The usually dignified forum had descended into chaos, as each delegation demanded answers about the human situation. "Order!" commanded Chancellor Kethvar, an elderly Thuman whose thick armor showed the scars of many battles. "Admiral Zexthor, report on the status of the human exchange program." Zexthor straightened his uniform and activated his formal speaking mode. "Honored Council, I regret to inform you that we have made a serious error in our assessment of human capabilities." The council chamber fell silent. Zexthor had been one of the strongest supporters of including humans in Federation military programs. "The humans are not the weak, primitive species we believe them to be," Zexthor continued. "They are apex predators who have disguised their true nature behind polite behavior and diplomatic language." "Explain," demanded Senator Vorthok, representing the Krathari delegation. His yellow eyes burned with anger at the loss of their champion warrior. Zexthor activated a holographic display showing Earth's evolutionary tree. Every other species in the Federation evolved from prey animals. Our ancestors spent millions of years running from predators, developing intelligence and technology to protect themselves from threats. The display shifted to show human ancestors hunting massive creatures across ancient landscapes. Humans evolved differently. Their ancestors were the threats that other animals ran from. They developed intelligence not to escape from predators, but to become better predators themselves. The council members shifted uncomfortably as the implications became clear. "For the past 50,000 years, Zexthor continued, while our species were learning to farm and build cities, humans were perfecting the art of warfare. They fought each other constantly, developing new and more efficient ways to kill." "How efficient?" asked Chancellor Kethvar, though his expression suggested he was not sure he wanted to know the answer. "A single human soldier, with no weapons and no armor, killed our strongest warrior in 3 seconds," Zexthor replied. The human showed no signs of stress or fatigue afterward. To him, it was just another day of training. The council chamber erupted into panicked discussions. Some members called for immediate expulsion of all humans from Federation space. Others suggested more extreme measures. "What are you recommending, Admiral?" Chancellor Kethvar asked, when order was restored. Zexthor had been dreading this question. His recommendations would shape the Federation's relationship with humanity for generations to come. "Honored Council," he began carefully. "I believe we have two options. We can treat humanity as a threat and attempt to contain or eliminate them. Or we can accept that they are now part of the galactic community and learn to work with their unique capabilities." "Work with them?" Senator Vorthok's voice was filled with outrage. "They killed one of our people in a fair fight that he started," Zexthor reminded the council. "The human acted in self-defense and followed all established protocols for combat challenges." The Admiral activated another display, this one showing human military history. "I have spent 3 days studying human warfare, and I can tell you this. If humanity wanted to conquer the galaxy, they could probably do it. Their military thinking is centuries ahead of ours. They understand concepts we have never even considered." "Such as?" Chancellor Kethvar asked. "Total war," Zexthor replied. "The complete destruction of enemy forces and infrastructure. Humans do not fight for territory or resources. They fight to eliminate threats permanently." The council members looked at each other with growing alarm. "However," Zexthor continued, "humans also have a concept we should appreciate. They call it protecting the innocent. Humans will fight to the death to defend beings who cannot defend themselves." He pulled up records of human military interventions on Earth. Conflicts where human soldiers had died protecting people they had never met, in countries they had never seen. "I recommend that we offer humanity a new role in the Federation," Zexthor announced. "Not as junior partners learning from superior species, but as our primary military specialists." "You want to give weapons to these killers?" Senator Vorthok could barely contain his outrage. "They already have weapons," Zexthor pointed out. "They have ships that can destroy planets and bombs that can end civilizations. But they also have something we desperately need, which is the willingness to use force when necessary," Zexthor explained. "For 200 years, the Federation has been weak because we fear conflict. We negotiate with pirates, pay tribute to raiders, and allow criminals to operate freely because we are afraid to fight. Humans do not have that fear. They understand that sometimes peace can only be maintained through strength." IMC, the council debated for hours, but eventually they reached a decision. Humanity would be offered a new position in the Federation structure. Military advisors with special authority to deal with threats that required decisive action. 3 weeks later, Chen found himself in a very different situation. Instead of being mocked by alien soldiers, he was briefing Federation generals on combat strategy. Instead of being treated like a primitive savage, he was being asked to solve problems that had plagued the galaxy for decades. The first assignment came from the Outer Rim, where a group of heavily armed pirates had been raiding shipping lanes for years. Federation diplomatic missions had failed, economic sanctions had been ignored, and military threats had been laughed at. Chen read the mission briefings with professional interest. The pirates had superior technology and defensive positions. They could outgun any Federation fleet, and their bases were too well hidden to find through conventional methods. "What do you recommend, Staff Sergeant Chen?" asked General Corksval, the same young Krathari who had once given humans a tour of the ship's facilities. Chen looked up from the reports and smiled the same calm smile that had terrified aliens in the training room. "We are not going to fight them," he said simply. "We are going to make them disappear." Within 6 months, piracy in the Outer Rim had dropped to 0. The pirates had not surrendered or negotiated. They had simply vanished, along with their ships, their bases, and any trace they had ever existed. When other criminal organizations heard about this, they began to reconsider their career choices. The galaxy suddenly became a much more peaceful place. The Federation learned that there were different types of strength. For millions of years, they had valued physical power and defensive capabilities, but they had never understood the power of a species that could end conflicts permanently. Chen stood on the observation deck of the new Federation command ship, watching stars drift past through the transparent metal windows. In his pocket was a message from Earth. More human military advisors were being sent to help with galactic security. The universe was about to become a much safer place for innocent beings everywhere, and a much more dangerous place for those who threatened them. As Chen often told his alien colleagues, humans do not start fights, but we do finish them.